Donald Trump, the man and his career, has lived within the courts and lived with those ups and downs and losses. He's been right there at that defendant's table because he had to be. Remember, he didn't defy the trial. He complained. At times he was caught allegedly breaking parts of the rules. But in the main, he went to court every day. And in the main at the Supreme Court, he waited to see what they would say. And that's been true up and down. So faced with the current bad news of these legal losses, he and his allies right now are running two plays. And I'm just going to explain them in plain English to you. They may be familiar. Number one is distract from the bad news with their own new and controversial claims. So just try to get up attention that way. It's not just Trump, although he loves his attention. He has a lot of people who got here, including his vice president, by quite publicly mimicking him and his approach. And some of these things are not that complicated. Anyone with an internet connection and a phone or any other source of news has seen this before. You're losing badly, that's the headline. Say something so outrageous, even so unlawful or un-American, that it draws in that attention. Number two, push, intimidate, and try to hammer the courts to press more of them towards this Trump view. And that strategy might be rewarded in a Supreme Court that, as I just reminded you, at times has cut against Trump, but other times has been very helpful to him. Those are basically the two moves. I'm not going to try to make it any more dramatic or complicated than that for any particular storytelling reason. But these are the two things going on. They are somewhat familiar. They have consequences. The first move is still just PR. Replace the headlines any which way. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. The second move is a type of legal strategy, not inside out, saying here's a good legal argument in court where they're losing these first rounds, but outside in. Let's make so much noise and ride this wave and scare people and try to get the federal judges to err on the side or allow more than they normally would, thinking that this will work or the Supreme Court ultimately won't do anything about it. Or, if you want to get closer to a constitutional crisis, daring the courts to intercede because maybe if they stay out of it, it won't get to the point where you actually have a federal politician defying all their orders or a Supreme Court order and we get to that crisis point. In other words, scare them that you would do that to the point that they back out. But of course, judges aren't supposed to do that. They're not supposed to bow to politicians' threats to not follow the rule of law and our orders. Their orders, the judges, I mean. Now, the fact that Donald Trump has lived with and followed court orders for a long time is relevant to that second move I'm telling you about because the hype of it and the fear of it basically requires everyone to go along and kind of listen to the hype and make people perhaps overly pessimistic or even surrendering in advance.
I think he should take a page out of Andrew Jackson's playbook. At some point, J.D. Vance is right when J.D. said, hold on, you can't have a judge step in when the president is exercising his constitutional authority.
The executive branch is the ultimate authority on federal issues, and we have rogue judges who are trying to stop members like Doge Team, Besant, from doing their job.
The last voice, a Trump legal advisor, is stating something that she has every right to say, right? You have free speech rights and people can debate this all out. But it is false. So I will tell you that. And I don't know if she got enough of a fact check in that particular interview we're quoting, but the fact check is no. The executive branch does not have the final say on matters, federal or any other matters, because the courts in this country rule on the law. And that's why there are these clashes. And people know this. People have generally supported it, right? Constitutional principles do better when there is some broad understanding and support for them. But Trump is trying to test how far this will go. Now, I'll give you another example that sounds bad. It sounds like it's bad to say that a sitting president is for foreign bribery. Why would you be for that? Indeed, there was an entire impeachment about shaking down Ukraine for abusing power for what could have amounted allegedly to a bribe. And the denial then was the president and Donald Trump saying, we weren't trying to do a foreign bribe. Keep that in mind, as tonight we have the news that the DOJ under Trump is going to make it easier to do foreign bribes. Now, here's the context. Past presidents have used lawful powers in deciding prosecutorial priorities. So presidents have de-emphasized at times low-level offenses like personal marijuana use or civil immigration offenses. They don't usually say those laws are meaningless or they're canceled, but they say that within law, in consultation with the lawyers I mentioned in government, they may change the dial on that. Tonight, Donald Trump is now trying a whole different version of that stems out of what the DOJ admitted this week, but with far more serious laws. I mentioned the U.S. has long opposed corruption abroad, and there are laws that prevent American companies from bribing foreign officials. Literally that simple. And that has been bipartisan, but now Trump is taking his party in a different direction and his administration blatantly embracing the prospect of current and future corruption, saying under Trump, the DOJ will no longer enforce. They are halting investigations and prosecutions of corruption in foreign countries. They're not saying there isn't corruption. They're saying they just won't prosecute it, and that corruption could become the United States competitive edge. That is extreme. From a honesty perspective, it is bananas, or any other word you want to use. The Times says it's a quite transactional approach to corruption cases. So there are many things going on. I've told you we will try to focus on what matters and pick and choose things, because we're not going to do everything. And we are going to dictate what we determine over the course of the day is important, significant news for you, and not just follow the bouncing ball. This one's important. Republicans used to back that law. It passed overwhelmingly bipartisan, and I'll just remind you the headlines at the time in the late 70s viewed it as pretty straightforward. This was the New York Times, December 77, Senate backs foreign bribery bill to limit and punish foreign bribery. Because who would be for bribery? Who would say that's good, foreign bribery? But here we are. Now, this move is not about domestic politics. It's not about even MAGA necessarily, although some other related moves might be. This is just a reminder of things that they didn't campaign on, that they aren't necessarily doing press conferences with Elon Musk about, and yet that matter a lot. It's a blatant embrace of letting American companies do foreign corruption and bribery. It's that simple. Now, the MAGA part coordinates with Trump using executive power twice in corruption-related cases, and both for Democrats. Okay? I'm going to explain this, but it's both interesting and many legal scholars and experts say concerning. Trump had already pardoned a Democratic governor, Rod Blagojevich. He had been previously imprisoned for selling Obama's Senate seat, for trying to, all the way back in 2008. Now, this week, he's been fully pardoned. So he was already out of prison. This is a messaging embrace. There's no big physical change there. And Trump's DOJ now ordering prosecutors to drop what were corruption charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams.
Accusing state officials of failing to enforce federal immigration law. She was flanked by federal agents who were wearing raid jackets as she made this announcement.
We're here today because we have filed charges against the state of New York. We have filed charges against Kathy Hochul. We have filed charges against Letitia James and Mark Schroeder, who is with DMV. New York has chosen to prioritize illegal aliens over American citizens. It stops today. As you know, we sued Illinois, and New York didn't listen. So now you're next.
I should note the lawsuit had not yet been filed as of that press conference. My source tonight is CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig. And Ellie, based on what we know so far, I still don't think it has been filed yet. And because of that, in a statement, Governor Hochul responded to this and said, quote, "We can't comment further on a press conference announcing a potential lawsuit that has not been filed yet in any court." Ellie, do you think, is that normal? Is that typical to not have it filed before you announce a lawsuit like this?
No, Caitlin, it can only be the result of incompetence. It is 101 when you're announcing a case as a prosecutor. You don't get out there, announce it, and then file it later. Sometimes you have to file it 5 minutes after your presser ends or 10 minutes after your presser ends. But to have it go hours without filing anything is completely inexplicable. Look, if they needed more time to investigate this thing, God bless, take the time you need. But don't hold the presser when you haven't even put anything on the books yet.
Well, it was a bit confusing when the Attorney General came out and said she had filed charges against these officials. I think people were trying to figure out what exactly was going on and what we should expect to be filed.
What a bizarre way to open this press conference, and you just played the clip. In the first 10 seconds of this press conference, the Attorney General of the United States said 3 times she had, quote, filed charges against New York, against Kathy Hochul, against Letitia James. Now, 99 out of 100 civilians understands that to mean criminal charges. 100 out of 100 prosecutors understands that to mean criminal charges. When she said that, my phone went crazy. People saying, wait, has Pam Bondi indicted Letitia James? Now, it turns out the answer is no. This is a civil lawsuit. But to use that terminology is either an inexplicable screw-up by the new Attorney General, although she's been a prosecutor 20 years, or was an intentional choice of overheated, misleading rhetoric.
Yo, check it. Trump just took another fat legal L, and surprise, surprise, he did it to himself again. Dude basically climbed up the tree and sawed off the branch he was sitting on. Now, all of a sudden, he's out here acting like he cares about corruption and misconduct when it comes to the people who actually held him accountable. And let's be real, it's no coincidence he's going after the 2 women who put him and his sketchy empire on blast. His company? Guilty. Him? Guilty. Civil cases? Yep. Criminal cases? Yep. But now, instead of owning up, he's trying to make sure judges can't do to others what they did to him, aka hold powerful people accountable. And don't sleep on his boy, Eric Adams, who's rocking that little D next to his name but vibes straight up Republican. Trump's trying to rewrite the rules, but in doing so, he's basically nuking any shot at taking down the people he's beefing with. If he actually had a case against Letitia James and crew, he wouldn't need to pull these stunts. But guess what? He doesn't, because they did nothing wrong. Classic Trump. Big talk, bad strategy, and an even worse ending.